Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello, Brett.
Wow.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Yeah.
We're recording on a Monday.
We're recording on a Monday,
Okay.
the day after Father's Day, too. How was your Father's Day?
It was excellent.
Excellent.
How was
glad
yours?
Also excellent. I get to spend some time with my children and my wife and my family, the rest of my family. So it was really nice. Started the day at the beach and the kids with the kids. So that was
any
great.
day that Jeff Bast gets to go to the beach is a good day.
Yes, and I do it very often. So you can only imagine how many good days I get.
They stack up.
They stack up, yeah. So I had a question for you today. It's kind of a
another one. I mean, you did
I don't
ask me
know.
one already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's
You
true.
get two today. I'll give you two.
So the question is,
Yes.
Would you want to know
No.
the precise date of your death if you could find that out?
No.
That's a pretty Oh, really? No.
No.
Okay. You're just
No,
Is there-
because
there's
then
any-
I would be thinking, knowing me, I'd be thinking about it the whole time.
right.
Well, now I have 3 days left. Now I have 4 days. I have 4 months, or I have 6 months, or I have a year, or I have 10 years. I would just be thinking about it the whole time.
Okay.
And so rather than that, I'd say live your best life
All
every
the
time,
I like it.
as
I
if it was your last
Yeah.
day. Because then you're like, well, I have a year, so I don't have to do that today. I'll do it tomorrow.
But if you
Or I'll
had
do-
a year, maybe you'd do some things differently than.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting in this podcast.
Right.
room
Exactly.
now.
exactly.
No, just
So,
kidding.
What are you doing? Get out of here.
Right.
I know
No,
you have many, many years.
Right.
Many years.
No, but I think that for me and knowing me and my personality, I would not want to know that.
Right. Yeah.
How about you?
I think I'm a yes. It's a hard question. I've had this discussion with many people, and most people are no's. And from most people are no's. They don't want to know, but I kind of feel like that same thing. Like if I had a year, I'd want to know so I could get to work. So, but I also can appreciate that knowing that would certainly could change a lot of things.
So let me ask you this: what's the first thing you would do if you knew
if I knew
what the date was?
Well, it depends. If it's 50 years from now, which I think it is, and I keep going with what I'm doing.
I mean, you're not a spring chicken.
Keep
50.
living my best life. Yeah.
All right. I mean, can I ask you?
107. I'm okay with that.
Wow. Can I ask you one question then, real quick?
I mean,
and then
we do
we'll
have
get
a
to our
guest,
guest. I know, and he's falling
Yeah,
asleep.
please.
But it's okay.
He's going to jump in on this.
We're going to ask him that question too. But the question for you would be: do you have a so-called bucket list, not written down, but you have it like?
Yeah, I mean, I have things.
Like,
that I
what
wanna
are
do,
the top one or two things? Because we don't need a whole list. We don't want to bore our listener completely. But what's like one or two things?
Places
and not in any order.
A lot of them are places you want to visit.
Sure.
I want to visit.
Sure.
I would like to go to base camp at Everest. I've never bungee jumped. I'd like to bungee jump.
That would be the last
over
day.
water.
See, for me, I'd bungee jump.
I want to bungee jump over water.
The last,
there's like silly things that
that's not silly.
I wouldn't,
Base camp is not silly. Base camp's awesome.
Exactly. So there are a lot of things like that. But yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate you.
Well, that's a very, very thought-provoking question. I appreciate that. ChatGPT.
I think, we're going to have an expert on. He's going to tell us. He could probably tell us this information already. So, our guest today is Anthony DeSimone. Anthony is the founder of You're the Expert Now LLC, where he empowers small businesses and entrepreneurs through a unique blend of financial expertise and AI strategy. He has over 23 years of experience as both a certified public accountant and certified management accountant, and he helps clients build solid financial foundations, specializing in cash flow forecasting, financial reporting, operational benchmarking, and team development. He is also pioneering the integration of AI and ChatGPT in business through offerings like the ChatGPT Accelerator, AI Masterminds, and guided implementation programs. His goal is to help business owners work smarter, preserve data integrity, increase profitability, and confidently navigate the future with AI. His personal pursuit of a Chat G PhD, get it? Chat G PhD, reflects his commitment to advancing AI understanding. He's a former Deloitte professional. He has experience as a CFO, COO, and a president. He also serves as an adjunct professor and formerly as an interim executive director at the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership at the University of Buffalo. And we're just happy to have him here. Welcome, Anthony.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, really impressive background. So Brett and I know you as an AI expert, but you're so much more than that, aren't you? But before we go to that, did you want to chime in on our on what we talked about before?
Yeah, I was wondering if the reason why you were asking that question was if you were doing any research with the new generative AI technology out there that could do a pretty darn good job at predicting when you're going to die.
Yeah, I don't want anyone predicting. To me, that's a guess. I could do that myself, So yeah, I thought maybe you were thinking, wow, you're never going to make it that long. AI is going to destroy us before that anyways. So
no, actually AI, if you know how to use it properly, it's not going to replace you as much as it'll enhance you. And I think that's one of the mistakes a lot of people make when using this technology or when learning about it, is that the assumption is that it's going to turn into Terminator and destroy all of us and there'll be no jobs for anybody and all of that. And just like any other technology, it is going to, I believe, create more jobs than it's going to replace.
Nice.
So I know, there's all of the people out there that are talking about, and I'm one of those that's like, there's all this bad stuff that can happen with AI if there's bad actors and things like that. But I don't necessarily want to talk about that today. I'd rather us focus on the positives relative to business and the good work that you're doing to integrate the two. Because boy, we could go on for hours about all the conspiracies and all the bad stuff. So if you're a law firm or professional services firm and you're starting to dip your toe, which I know you're going to say is too late, into AI, where do you start?
Well, actually, to be honest, it's not too late. I'm speaking on this, Brett, every day, really. Mm-hmm. And I'm still learning that there's more people out there that are learning how to spell ChatGPT than know how to use it. So it is still early. I mean, that's the good news for anybody out there who wants to get started today. We are still very early and you can catch up fast, right? So the first thing that I would suggest anybody to do is to begin the process of just trying it out. I mean, there's ChatGPT, for instance, there's a free version. There's a free version to a lot of these different generative AI tools, but the great thing about ChatGPT is it's what's called multimodal. So it gives you pretty much all the options and features of all the generative AI tools. It could help you write documents, but it could also help you create great images. It could also help you create video if you want, text to video. So it could do all of the things. So I highly recommend that the first step is to just sign up for a free account, begin trying it out, and then just get into the habit of using it every day. Because if you can just follow some of the tips to accelerate the use, you could very quickly catch up.
Yeah. I like hearing that because I've heard some people say, oh, you missed the you missed the boat already or whatever. This is way past this. This ship has sailed. I don't think so. I agree with you. I'm using it. And actually, you've been a great influence on me for that. Brett and I have attended a few conferences where you have been a speaker on the topic. And then you and I separately had a dinner. And so we talked a lot about it. And I have become a daily user. I use it pretty much every day in some respect. And I think for me, like the easy transition was, instead of going to Google, go there first. I think we all run Google searches, dozens of Google searches a day. So if you start at ChatGPT, that's an easy way to kind of start making it a habit, I have found.
Yeah, that's one of the most basic. That's one of the best first tips. And thank you for the compliment on that. Have it open all the time. Use it like you currently use Google, where you have it open all the time. When you open up your computer, everybody has Google just sitting there and you're not even thinking about it. You don't even think twice. It's that muscle memory that if you got to search something, you're just automatically going to Google.
Yeah.
What I want everybody to begin to get the habit, that muscle memory, is to just go to ChatGPT, and use that on a regular basis to the point where you are getting the mindset of, can I do this faster? Can I do this easier? Can I do this better if I try this on ChatGPT? And the more you do that, the better you're going to become. This is a really easy technology to learn once you get started. And it's the smartest, most caring, most intelligent, least judgmental teacher or trainer you're going to ever have. So just start asking it questions and it'll start giving you results.
I like it. Since we're talking about the topic of getting started, can you share your origin story? How did you become this AI expert? How'd you get involved in this? I mean, you were a CPA before, right?
Yeah, CPA. Well, what I did is I started out at Deloitte, and I began just like right when I started working at Deloitte, I realized very quickly I hated auditing, but but I loved all the small businesses that I was going into. So I realized that after I got my CPA, I needed to switch out to work in small business, perhaps controller or CFO or something like that. And then I began that process. And as I was going through the process of becoming the controller, moving up to CFO, CEO, and sometimes the owner, playing the role of the owner, because a lot of times what would happen is I would get hired as a last resort because the business was failing, and I would get really good at these workouts. Now, as I was learning all of this, I began teaching adjunct at the University at Buffalo. And as I was working there, I learned about a branch of the University of Buffalo called the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. And that's basically a mini MBA for business owners. And I was like, when I learned about that, I'm like, those are my people. I got to get over there. And I started volunteering with that group. And over time, what I discovered is all these tools that I created use as a CFO and a CEO, and just creating cash flow forecasting, P&L forecasting, things like that, strategic planning. All of these tools that I had, business owners needed. So my volunteer work on that side of the branch of University of Buffalo became part consulting, which turned into full consulting. And then when I got into full consulting, it was basically, I would come into your business and I would help improve profitability and cash flow, teach you how to not only learn how to read those financial statements, but actually how to utilize them in ways where you can make sometimes small tweaks to your business and improve that profitability significantly. So basically, everything that I did was about helping them improve profitability. And if you just distill that down, there's only 3 ways you can improve profitability. You can increase revenue, you could decrease expense, or you can improve your efficiency, right? And when ChatGPT came out 2.5 years ago, and I was early on that because I was watching and following this technology, I realized that checked all 3 boxes. If you use ChatGPT correctly, you can improve your revenue, you can decrease your expense, you can improve your efficiency. And so I thought, I got to learn this technology so that I could use it with my clients. And one thing led to another, and I realized how big this industry was going to be, that I realized I could pivot myself and become an AI specialist, which I've done.
So you're one of the ones that are taking AI and not necessarily creating a new industry or new jobs as a result of AI, but effectively pivoting, right, in your career and adopting AI and trying to help others adopt AI and whatever. I see AI as obviously there's going to be some jobs that are going to be replaced, as with any technology, but there are going to be, like you did with your career, there are going to be ability to pivot and make small business more efficient, or any business more efficient. You know, where do you see some of the big positives for small business, either CPA firms or law firms, in trying to move forward and adopt AI into their daily practice?
Yeah, as I went on this AI journey, which, by the way, part of the reason I made the switch was because people don't care that I'm a CPA, but if I tell them that I'm a ChatGPT specialist, they'll talk my ear off. It's amazing how this topic is so hot.
They're not going to talk to you about debits and credits. They want to talk about AI, right? Fair.
They don't want to have they don't care. But as I continue to follow this path, I have been working a lot with law firms and now specialize in generative AI with law firms. And, law firms in general, what do they want? They want to, this technology was made to make law firms more efficient if used correctly. So the problem that we run into is that a lot of these law firms, a lot of these lawyers who are using it don't understand the risks and capabilities, the risks especially of this generative AI. The 2 most important risks that really need to be trained is, first of all, the risks of AI hallucinations. You're never going to be able to separate AI hallucinations. And basically what that is, for those of you who don't know, is that sometimes generative AI will give you incorrect information, basically made up information. And the reason behind that, if you want to have that information, the reason behind that is because it's what's called generative programming. And the way generative programming was created is that if there were ever a gap of information, the generative programming will kick in and fill that gap with what it believes should be there. And sometimes it gets it wrong. And if you're not trained on the fact that generative AI is basically interwoven into the DNA of generative programming, hallucinations are interwoven into the DNA of generative programming, then you're going to take the risk of creating something, signing off on it, and then getting yourself and your law firm into trouble. We're already at a point where this is so bad that now there is a website that is tracking all of the AI hallucinations that lawyers are signing off on on court cases. And that is growing at 2 a day. I mean, this is not just once in a while. This is happening all the time now.
Well, I want to jump in real quick because I know Jeff has a particular example, as do I, of pleadings getting filed with made-up cases. And I know that's something that's been reported in other courts and all over the country and everything like that. To me, those are, I'll use the word bad lawyers. They were bad lawyers before AI. But it's going to, like you said, these are hallucinations. I love the word. And maybe that's a good word to use in court if we ever come across this stuff. It's a hallucination. It doesn't exist. And so to me, AI and what we talk about internally, if people use it or if we have it as a tool sort of inside another platform, which we have, it's a starting point. It is not the end point.
I think that's right. And I think what you're seeing is we are seeing more of this. And I'm actually going to court tomorrow on a case right now where this very issue is for consideration by the court. It's no different than, a lawyer always has a duty to verify the information that, we provide to a client, but especially to a court. And we've been taught that since the beginning of time. When we're in law school, we're always taught, because even when you cite a case, back in the days when we used to have books, we would be taught to shepherdize a case, which is you're going into these other books to figure out, is this case still a good case? Even if it's a real case, sometimes they get overruled later in time. And so we always had a duty to verify information. And this is no different. I mean, these are lawyers that are running a search on AI and taking that answer and just presenting it to a court or another party as if it's,
Well, I'm going to disagree on one point. It is different in the sense that it is made up as opposed to, a court having overruled or distinguished a decision, which is bad in and of itself to cite that. But, it is not a made up court decision that never happened.
But no, you're right. Yeah, you're right. What hasn't changed is the obligation that we have to verify information. Just the same as if I saw it argued by somebody else in another case, I shouldn't just adopt that argument or adopt that case in my case because they might have gotten it wrong. So we're always supposed to verify the information that we present. So unless you had a comment on that, I wanted to ask a question about this you called it generative programming. Does it?
You have a comment first.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Yeah, the first time this happened where, made up cases were created by ChatGPT was like 3 or 4 months right after ChatGPT was released. Seemed like all the lawyers heard about it, they knew about it, and yet here we are where it's happening more often than ever. It's truly a lack of training. That's part of it. Secondly, we have generative AI is now being integrated in all the software that we're using. So now we're creating a situation where people are not trained, and now it's basically in the software that they're using.
Right.
And so they don't realize sometimes the mistakes they're making. And the courts are becoming less and less patient with it. Yeah. The fines are getting higher.
Yep.
Now supervisory lawyers are also getting fined. Law firms are getting fined. I mean, this is going to be a significant problem in a lot of ways. And that's why it's so important to train the team on how to use this, the risks associated with it, because you don't want to be on that list. You just don't want your firm to be on that list.
Agreed. So my question about this generative programming, maybe it's multiple questions, but one is, does the AI know when it's doing this? And so can you just ask it to verify its own information? And then the second question is, if we figure out that it's a hallucination, do we have some, not duty, but should we be telling the AI that it's hallucinated so that it learns from this? Or, I guess it's not really our job, but.
Yeah, well, it continues to train on everything we do. Like the great thing about the name ChatGPT, which is like a terrible name, actually does a really good job at describing all generative AI. So the G part is generative. That's what's causing these AI hallucinations, the generative programming. The T part is transformer. This is that deep learning algorithm that every time we use it, it trains on everything that we do. So every time it gives us a hallucination, and let's say you say, well, this is a hallucination, it's going to check it and it's going to say, oh, you're right. Sorry about that. And then it learns from that and becomes less hallucinogenic. I can tell you that for a fact, because when I started using ChatGPT probably a month after it was released, and that thing was hallucinating like it was on some kind of generative programming acid trip on all the basic stuff. I mean, it was just silly sometimes. It's a lot harder to create these hallucinations, but typically it's happening when it's, something incredibly important. Right?
Oh, yeah.
When you're doing research or something like that, you can't afford it to hallucinate. So it's more important than ever to, first of all, understand that there's limitations to these tools. And if you can start there and understand the risks of AI hallucinations, then you can do things to help mitigate hallucinations. Like, for instance, the first thing that I suggest everybody do is test it to failure. Actually use your skill, whatever your background is, start digging deeper, asking ChatGPT really detailed questions about whatever that topic is, and then just keep going deeper and deeper. Eventually, it will fail, especially if you're talking about having it answer something that happens to be relatively current as well. But you have to use it to failure so that you can remind yourself that as good as this is and as fast as it responds to you every time you ask it anything, that doesn't mean that it's correct.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Make sure you do that. And then one of the things that I like to do, especially when I'm researching a topic that I'm not that familiar with, because that's where you can have some real hallucinations when you really don't know what you're researching. What I like to do, and this is one of the other things that I highly recommend people do once they get comfortable with using generative AI, is to sign up for a couple of ChatGPT's competitors. One is called Claude. I use that account. One is called Perplexity, which, by the way, does a fantastic job at search and research. And in fact, I don't even use Google for search. If I'm going to search, I'm usually going to Perplexity, because that is exactly what I would expect a search engine to act like with generative AI technology. But anyways, I have several other accounts, and when I'm doing any deep research on any kind of topic that I'm unfamiliar with, I'll go to ChatGPT, prompt it to do the research. Then I'll go to two of the competitors. I'll go to Claude, same exact request for research. Then I'll go to Perplexity, same exact request. Then I'll take all three answers, combine them together, go to all three of them, and have them review each other's work for any contradiction. So if you do things like that, you can mitigate the hallucinations that potentially will be there. But at the end of the day, you got to have a human involved. You got to check the work.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like, well, one, you're investing a lot more time. I appreciate that.
I have a question. You said the G, thank you for this. Chat, G is generative, T is transformer. Yep. What's the P?
Yep. Programming.
The P stands for pre-trained.
Oh.
So it's been trained with all of this data from the internet.
All right.
Which, by the way, is why we have what's called AI bias at times. Because think about it. I mean, if ChatGPT, any of these generative AI tools, but let's use ChatGPT, was trained on pretty much the internet, who created the content from the internet? A whole bunch of humans who had their own bias. Yeah. So it's basically now learned these biases. So you have to assume there's the risk of AI bias as well.
Yeah. We've all learned something new here today.
Yeah.
Many things.
Exactly. Yeah. Many.
Yes.
Yeah. On this topic of like training your AI. So if I run a search and it tells me something that I just think is wrong, and I look and I always verify. So I verify the information and I find that it's wrong. If I tell it, okay, this was a hallucination, and then ask the same question that I started with again, will I get a different answer?
You will most definitely get a different answer. Will it be the correct answer?
Right,
well, you got to check it to make sure. It's definitely not going to be the same answer you just see, especially if you just, in that same thread, corrected it. It'll give you a different answer. But that's typically what I would do. If I see a hallucination, I'll tell it, hey, this isn't right. And to make sure it does learn from that, I would suggest that you do that too. But at the end of the day, that's still not going to solve that bigger problem of AI hallucinations in generative programming. So I do suggest that everybody follow a philosophy. Whenever I'm teaching this to law firms, and just, one of the services that I provide is that I go in and I teach everybody the risks and capabilities of this technology. You can solve so many problems by just following this philosophy. It's called people first, people last. I went in and taught the team at Buffalo, Toronto Public Media Group, PBS, NPR, all of that, to help bring generative AI safely into their organization. And in the process, I mean, they're in the business of creating content. And the last thing they want to do is create generative AI content that's 100% generative AI. So as I was helping them build their AI usage policy, one of the things that came out of it is the concept or philosophy of people first, people last. And I thought that was genius. That is the way we should be using all this generative AI technology, because they wanted the human in it. So basically what people first, people last means is simply this. People first, whenever you're using these generative AI tools, people first, your ideas, your input, your voice. Then you let the generative AI speed up the process of creating whatever it is that you're creating. And then people last. Check the work. Make sure there's no AI hallucinations or bias. Make sure your voice is consistent throughout whatever it is that you created. And most importantly, and this is what people get completely wrong, make sure you've cleaned it up so well that it doesn't even appear that you just use generative AI.
Yeah.
That's how you should be using these tools. And if you could just follow that philosophy, you're not going to have hallucinations and bias and all that, because you're going to actually check the work. And really and Jeff, what you had said about saving time is that, yeah, you're going to speed up the process by using the generative AI to create or do the research or whatever, but you're going to give some of that time back at the end when you're checking the work.
Right.
I have a question. As AI continues to take over and be our source, like you said, instead of Google, use Perplexity or Claude or Chat, how do we confirm? How will we confirm what's a hallucination and what's not a hallucination, right? Because now, right, there's other sources and you can go to other things, but at some point, will everything be AI, and how will you know if it's a hallucination or not?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I would assume that the technology is going to get better and better, just like I've already seen the hallucinations drop dramatically, that it's going to get so good that it'll be hardly ever happening. That would be my prediction on where that heads. But if we're using generative AI for everything, stacking it with generative AI, then there's going to be a risk that it'll be there. But I think that it'll be so good that it'll be almost as if it never happened.
So it will decline. The hallucinations will decline, with time. Continue to.
I think that as the tech gets better and as it transforms itself, perhaps, hopefully that continues.
Yeah. And you know what? And the way that you'll be checking, like for instance, there's a generative AI tool out there called Notebook LM. Right? It's a Google product. And I always like to share this one with my lawyer friends because it's definitely the direction that we're going with generative AI for research. So what's great about Notebook LM is that even today, what you can do is upload the equivalent of 1 million tokens, which is about 850,000 words. So think of all the source material you could put up there. So what it does is that it's only going to act like a large language model, an LLM or a ChatGPT-like technology for just the material you uploaded. Okay. So what's cool about this is that at that point, you upload that information. Now it knows all of it, but that's the only thing it's going to source. So when you ask it questions on any of that information you uploaded, it does an amazing job at giving you summaries and answers the questions. But they've gone the next step where it cites exactly where it found it. And then you click on the site and it'll go right to the source and highlight the area in the source where it found it.
Wow.
So it's going to speed up the process of, checking for hallucinations, because if you now have all of the items cited and then you can very easily click it and it'll go right to the source and highlight, and you could just double check.
Yeah.
Now you're just auditing the work.
I love it. That sounds great. This is so exciting. I feel like we could just keep going with this topic. Did you have any final?
I have so many, but I agree. I think that's a good point to leave it and leaving our listener wanting more.
Yeah,
so we can bring Tony back.
Yeah, Tony, your information will be in the show notes, but who should be calling you and hiring you right now before we sign off?
Thank you for that. And I'd be happy to come back because I could talk for hours.
I have so much more.
There's so much new happening all the time. It's like it doesn't stop. But I am now spending a lot of time in specializing with helping bring generative AI safely into law firms.
Right.
So if law firms want to get a hold of me, a couple of the services that I provide is I'll do a 2-part presentation on generative AI, the risks, the capabilities, so that everybody understands in the firm, they'll understand what an AI hallucination is and what bias is and how to make sure you keep all your information secure. And then I also come in and help with what I call an AI beta team, where I help accelerate the process of teaching your team how to be the best in generative AI in your field, in the law firm.
Love that. That sounds great. If you're a lawyer out there and you're not using AI, you need to start subscribing to Tony's newsletters. He's got lots of information out there. Follow him on social media and then hire him to bring him to your firm. This is a no-brainer. I've enjoyed this, Tony. You've been fantastic. I'm sure the listener also enjoyed it. And as a way to show us that, leave us a review. How about 5-star rating? Subscribe to the show and share it with your friends and family. Help others find us. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Nelson. And always, Jeff. It's my pleasure.
No, it's my honor.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @FastAmron.